My lead source tonight is the former Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren. Thank you so much for being here. Mr. Ambassador, I got a message from a friend in Israel who said she hadn't cried this much since October 7th, but she said that these tears taste different. Can you describe this day?
They taste very different, Dana. Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. We were discussing this before I went on the air, is that every time we see these pictures of the hostages being reunited with their parents and their families, we break out crying. And no matter how many times you see it, it's the same emotional impact. Deep, passionate emotion. And it's difficult sometimes to explain to people who don't live in Israel what the redeeming of hostages mean to us. It's deeply ingrained in our culture, in our society, even in our traditions. It's in the Bible. And there's a price to be paid. As your reporter noted, we had to release 250 terrorists who have killed dozens and dozens of Israelis. We had to release over 1,000 prisoners of war. These are literally prisoners of war. And many of these people may go back to committing terror. We know that Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October 7th, the chief of Hamas, was released in an earlier exchange for a hostage. So it's a huge risk, but it's a risk at a price that Israelis overwhelmingly are willing to pay. And it's an extraordinary moment. And yes, it's true. We have to see what happens in the next phases of this American initiative, which in many ways has no precedent.
And let's talk about what's next on what was the battlefield and with the prospect for peace in a second. But I do want to ask about the remaining hostages. CNN is reporting that Israel assessed that Hamas might not be able to find and return the deceased hostages. What is your latest understanding of that situation?
It was almost expected, I must say. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It deals not just with physical terror, but emotional and psychological terror. And they're going to say an excuse, well, we can't find them, which I think is a very lame excuse. The agreement that we have under the 20 points with the Trump administration is that Hamas has 72 hours to return all of the hostages, living and deceased. They returned 4 bodies today, 4 remains. I know 2 of those families personally. I know the agony they go to by not having that closure, not being able to give their loved ones a burial in the land of Israel. It is excruciating. And I'm wearing this pin, which is the hostage yellow ribbon pin, and I will continue reading it until, and I believe all Israelis will, until the last of those remains of the deceased hostages will be reunited with their families.
Since the IDF pulled back the defensive positions on Friday, Hamas has been carrying out a wave of killings. Fellow Palestinians, some include rival factions, dozens of them executed. Hamas is, of course, degraded, but still very obviously armed and dangerous. What does that tell you about the reality going forward?
Reality going forward is that the next phase is the crucial phase. Especially all the other phases of the Trump peace plan, the 20 points, are contingent on fulfilling the next phase, which is disarmament of Hamas, taking the guns away from Hamas. Now, Israel's military options are much more limited now. The population of Gaza, civilian population of Gaza, has returned to the northern part of the Strip. Hamas has that human shield again. Hamas still has 50% of its tunnels, and we're talking about 500 kilometers of tunnels that it had on October 7th, and it has the guns. So getting Hamas without a strong military pressure on Hamas will not be easy, but it's not impossible, Dana. The Trump team and our allies in the region have many tools at their disposal. They can cut off arms, cut us cash payments to Hamas, and most importantly, can cut off Hamas's access to humanitarian aid. Hamas steals about 60% of all that humanitarian aid and resells it back to the Gaza population at exorbitant prices and enriches itself. We can choke Hamas off, and together with pressure from Qatar, from Trump, from Turkey, which are Hamas's major patrons in the region, I believe Hamas can be persuaded to maybe dismantle their military infrastructure.
And what about Israel? What should Israel's role inside Gaza be with regard to rebuilding and also with regard to safety and security and keeping peace?
Well, right now, as you mentioned, Israel maintains defensive positions within Gaza, actually in 43% of Gaza, and is poised for the possibility of a renewed fighting with Hamas. And Israel will certainly reserve that right. But if Hamas can be disarmed, if an international peacekeeping force can move into Gaza and begin the reconstruction of Gaza and the de-radicalization of the Gaza population, which has been educated now for almost an entire generation to carry out events like October 7th. Israel should cooperate 100%.
But can I just ask you?
It is Israel's paramount strategic and moral interest to do so.
Forgive me. You say peacekeeping force. That's pretty precarious when you're talking about people who are terrorists who are still armed there. It's not peacekeeping quite yet.
That's an excellent point because we know, alas, in the Middle East, that peacekeeping forces only work when there's no peace really to keep, and this is not really a peacekeeping force; it's a stability force. And I don't think any country is going to give its citizens, its soldiers, to that force if Hamas still has its guns. They're not willing to die for Gaza. They're willing to help rebuild Gaza, to give Gaza life. And therefore, before any international stability force can move into there, Gaza has to be demilitarized.
Ambassador Michael Oren, it is a really momentous day, and I'm really honored that you shared it with us tonight. Appreciate it.
An honor to be with you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. And now